FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
Let me check in this hour with our guest, Patrick Tuohey from the Show Me Institute. Patrick, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Just the other day, we were talking to you guys about Centene and the development over in Clayton and how much the city's throwing into that. And today we're kind of pivoting a little bit back to the two large metropolitan areas in the state of Missouri, St. Louis and Kansas City, and what they need to be doing to try to boost their competitive advantages. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I spent 2 weeks, probably like a lot of us out there, I spent 2 weeks in August on vacation with my kids. We drove down to San Diego, 4,000 miles round trip. I saw lots of different places. We drove through Vegas, and we drove through San Diego, even drove through Winslow, Arizona, and I got my picture taken.
On a street corner? Nice.
And but you know, those towns, they know what works for them, right? And they know what their competitive advantage is, and they go for it. So Vegas is about gambling. It's about casinos. Their ads say, you know, keep a secret. What happens here stays here. Even Winslow, Arizona, tiny town, they know, hey, we're in a famous song. Let's go with that. And so they've got a bronze statue of Jackson Browne there on the corner. Nice. And they're working it.
Are there lots? Do they have a flatbed Ford dealership there somewhere?
They have a mural on the corner, and painted on the mural is a woman driving a flatbed Ford.
Nice.
So they got something like it. but you know, they know what their strengths are, and they go with it. And in Kansas City and in St. Louis, I mean, I heard St. Louis is considering subsidizing an aquarium now. We play catch up, right? We want to do what other cities are doing, regardless of whether it fits with our need or with our image. And wouldn't it be nice if the leaders of Kansas City and St. Louis said, hey, what's our competitive advantage? You know, we did a paper years ago. Wendell Cox, I don't think he's a relation, but Wendell Cox is an economist, and he looked at St. Louis, and he said St. Louis has a great cost of living, a very low cost of living compared with the rest of the United States. Kansas City does too. We're both in the middle. What we should be doing is going out and pitching big companies around the United States and saying, you know, move your back office, move your sales force to St. Louis. It'll be much cheaper. The quality of living is higher. Getting around the city, commuting is much less. You'll save time. You'll save money. And that's where we can compete with cities like Chicago and New York and Los Angeles. But instead, we try to ape them. Right? We say, well, we'll build a streetcar too, or we'll build a new airport, $1 billion, Aerotropolis in St. Louis, or the airport in Kansas City, or an aquarium. And it's not St. Louis and Kansas City being more of themselves. It's them they're being less of themselves, and it's sort of like when you go to a mall today. It's all the same stores, it's all the same products, and you don't get a sense of what that town is like.
Yeah, when I think of Kansas City, I think of barbecue. When people think of St. Louis, they may think of beer. So maybe we ought to sell it as a hotbed of beer or something like that. I'm just joking. So I did see the mayor of St. Louis come out, and he was talking about Mayor Slay, who's not running for re-election here, was critical in a speech that he gave the other day of a lack of cooperation. Of course, he's looking for a merger between the city and the county, but he mentioned comparing St. Louis to a town in Colorado, maybe even Denver, with its public transportation. So those are the kinds of those are the kinds of ideas we're getting from our current administration.
Yeah, it's who else can we be like? And, you know, we've got a power and light district here in Kansas City. They've got one in Louisville. They've got one in Baltimore. You guys have entertainment districts there in St. Louis. And they don't feel necessarily like the town you're in. They become this kind of corporate image, and they all look the same. And the reasons, you're absolutely right. People think of Kansas City, they think of barbecue. Maybe they think of jazz. St. Louis, they think of beer. They think of baseball. You know, the city should be going with that type of stuff rather than just kind of subsidizing, it seems sometimes, anything that comes along. An aquarium may be a very good idea for St. Louis, and some private business should come along and take the risk and reap the reward. But instead, because perhaps it isn't a good idea, they always want more taxpayer dollars, and they want to build things that don't draw on the strengths of the city they're in.
That's a good point. Yeah, I would like to see them do that. I did have a CEO, though, of a corporation that was leaving St. Louis mentioned to me one time that the one thing he wouldn't miss about St. Louis is that he couldn't get anywhere from here. So when we lost our hub here after TWA, those sorts of things also factor into whether or not big corporations want to relocate. And I don't know what the situation is in Kansas City, but you have to just about, I suspect it's the same as Lambert. You have to connect through somewhere unless your ultimate destination happens to be Chicago or Atlanta or something like that.
Yeah, oftentimes that's the case, and that's not unique to the Midwest or Kansas City or St. Louis.
Right.
The airlines are just moving away from that old hub model that you and I grew up with because it's not cost effective for them. So that's something that everybody is struggling with. And the important point to realize is while that CEO says he may not miss it, that may not have been the reason why he was leaving. I
don't think it was ultimately, but in terms of when asked for the question, what's your advice on attracting new corporations here, and the answers are pretty similar each time.
Yep.
Well, get rid of that earnings tax that you charge my highly compensated top corporation people, and give me an airport where I can go hop on a plane and go straight to the city I want to go to. Well, one of those we have control over, the other one not so much.
Well, that's right. And to go kind of back to the baseball metaphor, in too many cities, they're always swinging for the fences, right? They want that grand slam, that big hotel, that airport, that thing that they think is going to put him over the top. And what we've learned in Kansas City over the last few years is you play small ball, get guys on base, keep the line moving, do the small stuff that you can control, which might be fix your sewers and streets, maintain infrastructure, fund public safety, work on schools, and the big ideas will take care of themselves. If you run an efficient city, the people who build buildings will come to you and want to live in your city. You don't have to do that stuff yourself.
Patrick Tuohey, I appreciate your time. Direct people to the website, showmeinstitute.org.
They can read all about these ideas and more at showmeinstitute.org, yeah.
Outstanding. Patrick, have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Yep,
Take care.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us today. Interesting thoughts on what these cities need to do to kind of try to, to attract more business. When we do crazy things like vote in, what's the catchy phrase they gave it in St. Louis, the living wage, and things like that, you're putting false floors on what costs are going to be associated with relocating a company to St. Louis. When you have an earnings tax and say just because you operate in the city, you have to take a portion of your income and leave it here so that we can support our police department and other programs we've come up with, that's a discouragement. That's not anything that's going to attract people to St. Louis.